I remember seeing South of Midnight by Compulsion Games in one of those jam-packed Xbox Games Showcase back in 2023's Summer Games Fest. In a show flooded with incredible games, both in quality and quantity, South of Midnight was a noteworthy one to my eyes, starting with the incredible art style to its world, complemented by its stop-motion animations to the characters, made me curious and excited to get my hands on it. I finally played it through Game Pass on PC, and I have some thoughts to share with you guys. Please note that I won't be spoiling the narrative of this game in this video, so without further ado, let's double jump and glide right in. Before jumping into the game as is, I want to touch on how this game performs, as I usually do for games that I play on my gaming laptop. So my laptop rocks a 10th generation i7 processor, 16GB of RAM, and an RTX 2060 GPU. Not the most powerful thing in the world of course, but I was surprised by how well it handled this game. I was able to enjoy this game at 1440p with very high settings and DLSS set to balanced. I could have gone for high or medium settings for more FPS, but I think I favor the visual fidelity for this one over frame rate. You be the judge of how it looks with the upscaling, because I think it looks stunning. And the game was able to hold somewhere between 50 to 80 FPS, except for combat and some occasional moments where I saw major drops. I don't know if it's my GPU or the game has optimization issues here and there, but even with that, I can't complain. I think it performed incredibly, considering just how good this game looks. Okay, speaking of how good this game looks, let's start there. The art style of this game is one of the best I've ever seen. It is so cool to look at, and it is consistently impressive, whether that be gameplay, cinematics, character models, or animations. It upholds its visual style and aesthetics on all fronts. It is so eye-catching, and it screams for your attention with its mostly warm color palette and supernatural flares. How it portrays the American South with this folklore-rich setting filled with dense swamps, decaying towns and landscapes is sure to mesmerize. The environments are incredibly detailed and lived in. It switches to different times of day and weather throughout its 10-hour-long story, and it looks awesome all the time. Same applies for the cinematics, which is definitely taken from Compulsion Games' past work in We Happy Few. That leads to this charming, painterly and caricature-like design to its characters during cinematics. I love it so much. I'm wonderstruck every time a cutscene appears. They're crazy expressive, considering it is steering so clear of realism. And all of this comes together thanks to its beautifully rendered animations. First, of course, the stop-motion animations of the characters, in contrast to everything else, is so effective and compelling. It adds to that charm I was talking about. Secondly, if you've watched my past videos, you guys know how important character movement is for me. It elevates my gameplay experience to another level. And the animations to Hazel's movement in this game are just so good. It is fluid, dynamic, and almost like she's dancing as she's moving to the music in the background. Running around, double jumping, and then gliding between platforms, wall running, sliding, etc. It is very satisfying and fulfilling to play. Speaking of music, it is awesome as well. There were a couple of gameplay moments where the music kicked in and I got chills. Really, the presentation and the visual style of this game is impeccable and definitely this game's strongest feature. Okay, we talked about the strongest feature for a while. Let's talk about its weakest feature, and that for me is the combat. The good part of this combat is the animations and how fluid it is as you are moving around and dodging enemies. It is very visually appealing as well, as they use a variation of effects to everything that looks awesome. But the bad part is the actual combat itself. When I first tried the combat, I was like, we got some problems. However, it surprisingly grew on me as we unlocked new skills and attacking spells, but after a while it was frustrating. The combat here is button mashy, with a lack of variation, and it gets very repetitive. So the game throws something called stigma at you, which when you interact, presents these weird supernatural beings to fight against. And this is where my problem with this combat starts. It kind of limits your movement around the level, which makes it feel preventive and eventually messy. What elevates that messiness is the enemy design, which is so baffling and has this lack of tactile sensation. The enemy design reminds me of Remedy's Control from 2019. I adore the gameplay of that game, but the enemy design was a big letdown. The same applies here. It gets so messy during combat that all I do is keep mashing the dodge and attack buttons to just get through the combat moments. I never felt excited to fight off the enemies as I do in other third-person action games. I did like the boss fights though. They're very intuitive, but again, they limit your movement around the level, making you feel confined and not freeing. Overall, I would say it is a very average gameplay package, which is so far cry from its presentation and visual fidelity, something I want Compulsion Games to improve on if they ever make a sequel. Okay, let's talk about the narrative at its core. As I mentioned at the start of this video, I won't be spoiling the story in any way, but just provide you a gist of how it is. So the game follows the story of Hazel Flood, a woman brought up in a hurricane-ridden town of Prospero, a fictional town based on Louisiana. At the very start of this game, Hazel's mother gets lost due to a hurricane, and that sets up our clear objective to find her, aided by her role as a weaver, someone who can perceive and mend the threads that connect life and spirits. This is what jumpstarts our journey, and Hazel's mother is the thin line that connects the whole narrative going forward.
Said and pack 'em light. Pack a bag, then pack it light.
As she explores and connects to this folklore-rich location and its supernatural and mythical creatures. This unique setting is truly the star of this narrative, as it offers countless perception to people who are familiar with this heritage. It is very cool and interesting, and for me, who is not familiar with the heritage, I was here for the emotional resonance that stems from the past life of Hazel's family. The game delves into her family's past, addressing compelling themes of grief, healing, and trauma. It is a very cool and unique narrative experience for me, something I was not expecting. And it has good characters as well, starting with our protagonist Hazel Flood, who dominates in terms of screen time. Compulsion Games describes her as a fiery protagonist, which I tend to disagree with. I think she is too sensible to be fiery, and she kind of carries this backpack of self-doubt, which is not a bad thing, but it's something I noticed. She's a cool character, nevertheless.
Maybe I could write you a good review online.
Another standout character is this beautiful creature that looks like a catfish, who is the narrator of this game as well. And it is so amazingly voice acted that I was at the edge of my seat at times. The game presents this storybook style thing after every chapter, where the catfish narrates what we've been through and what awaits us.
When I was a little old sack fry, folks watched out for me. But besides Lacey, Hazel didn't have nobody like that. Not even her grandma. So naturally, I gave her a helping fin.
A helping fin, huh? Sure.
Again, just going back to my point of the presentation just shining through and through, I'd go as far to say that the presentation alone should be reason enough to play and see the story through. I was just so impressed. If you thought video games have gotten to by the book, no pun intended, this ain't it, chief. However, you do see imprints of other third-person action adventures here, like the Uncharted games or the newer Insomniac games. My only issue with the story is that the story beats are so monotonous and repetitive, it negatively impacts the actual narrative behind it. Let me give you a simple example. Around chapter 8 or 9, the game introduces this new exploration mechanic where you can glide through wind gusts, allowing you to traverse the environment faster. And I was like, finally, I'm doing something different rather than fighting off those stigma things as I mentioned before. But after that chapter, it kept spamming those things down my throat again, and I was so tired. However, it does reward you with really cool cinematics and stories that are emotionally gripping, which I don't want to spoil. Overall, I enjoyed the story. It is a short, sweet, and sometimes tragic narrative that was worth seeing through. To conclude, South of Midnight is an impressive technical and artistic achievement that celebrates the third-person action-adventure genre. The production value that Compulsion Games has pulled off here with this game's presentation is just incredible. Even with all the shortcomings like its repetitive gameplay and story beats, I had a blast playing through it. And the music, my god, I am ready to replay this game again just to listen to the music of this game. It is that good. This is one of the best games I've played this year, and I highly recommend this to everyone who loves and adores single-player games. Hats off, Compulsion Games. If you enjoyed watching this video, please consider subscribing to this channel. I'm trying really hard to get to 1000 subscribers, and your support will help me a lot in my hustle. Thank you so much for your time. Rakzplayz signing off.
Yeah.